Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Coach's Corner. We're here in Week 10, November. Justin, can you believe it?
I cannot. I mean, time has absolutely flown. I mean, I think that for people, COVID was a made the first half of this year really long. But once finally football season came around, they're finally like, I have something to look forward to, and that's why the second half of this year has definitely gone by a little bit faster than the first.
Oh, man. Yeah, you're exactly right. It's been the release that people needed. I said whenever COVID I said, you want to see a civil war, take away football, see how people react to that. And thankfully, we haven't had to deal with that yet. But, man, as the season keeps going and more cases pop up, that might be something we have to deal with, or
Hey,
maybe a suspended play.
the state of Texas would break off and become its own country again if that happened. Those folks down in Texas would not let that happen.
Well, interestingly enough, whenever they litigated to become a part of the United States, that they left that in there. And honestly, they were probably thinking of a scenario such as this where we took away football from them. So who knows what Texas is going to do?
Exactly. It's a way of life down there.
Well, it's not Texas, but it's right. It's their neighbor, Louisiana. Saints versus Bucks. Let's just dive right on in. What in the world? What in the world?
It was sad. I mean, everyone was expecting this is going to be the game of the week, maybe the game of the year, but for sure the game of the week. Brady just didn't come to play. You can't put it all on Brady. I mean, he's a quarterback, so and future Hall of Famer, so he's naturally going to get most of the blame. But, I said this, I don't remember what episode it was of our show, that Tom Brady, it was when he was getting ready to play the Packers. Tom Brady has a bad game once a year. They might, they lose the game. And then the following week, he goes out and balls out, and they hit fire, they hit gold, it's just consistency is basically what they start to, develop in New England. Tampa Bay, man, teams are starting to get hot right now. It's never a good time to really have a loss. I mean, beginning of the season maybe, so you remember the feeling. You don't want to feel this again. It's all in our control. But at this point in the season, especially a division game, man, I mean when you're jogging the field goal team out at the end of the game to ensure that at least you don't get blown out. That's a problem. And here's the thing: the receiving core was relatively healthy. I mean, I know Chris Godwin had the his fingers buddy tape because of the finger surgery, but he was still able to play. But even regardless, you still had a healthy Leonard Fournette, a healthy Ronald Jones, who I really like. And you had a healthy Mike Evans, and you also get Antonio Brown, who I think we've talked about this, maybe trying to avoid feeding a guy purposefully. I think it got to the point in the game where they had to feed him the ball because Mike Evans wasn't doing much, Chris Godwin wasn't doing much, the running backs weren't doing much. I think that Brady early in the game was trying to force the ball to Gronk a little bit. I think there was a fourth down where he had Gronk, but he overthrew him. And that defense just did not look like it did against, some of the other impressive wins they've had. We'll see how they rebound from it. But, we were texting about this, the night of the game. You said that the Saints are a completely different team when they have Mike Evans. And you're 100% correct. And I think this just proves your point with that Mike Evans makes a huge difference for the Saints. And he would make a huge difference for any team. If anybody was like, there's one wide receiver I want in the league, people would argue Devontae Adams. People would argue, a couple other guys, Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, but Mike Thomas is on that list too.
Right. No, absolutely. A big thing that was concerning to me was the number one thing. They never changed the coverage. They just played straight man to man and dared Brady to throw it, and he refused. He refused to take the deep shots to Mike Evans. Mike Evans had less than 10 targets. In the presser, you see a guy like you see that Brian Ruffledge, you see Bruce Arians sit there and say that's criminal, that we should go to jail for that. They make these jokes, but yet again, they're not asking Tom. Whenever you started your explanation, you said right away we shouldn't put the blame on Tom Brady. Why not? Tom Brady gets all the credit for the 6 Super Bowl rings he won in New England. He gets all the credit whenever he wins. This is absolutely on Tom Brady. You see something, you take it away. You audible the play. If you're going to command this level of respect, you're going to say the things you say to your teammates, you're going to get in their face. You are absolutely supposed to be held accountable. It is unacceptable that I think Tom Brady keeps getting pass after pass after pass when he turns in these clunker performances. Are they rare? Sure. But no other quarterback gets these. Drew Brees was winning football games, and people were asking, is he done? Is he finished? He can't throw the ball. Tom Brady puts up 3 points, and we're not asking if he's done. We're asking, when's he going to rebound? You're talking, oh, he's going to turn in this fire performance. Right, because history tells us that. But it's like, where's the double standard end? And so for me, this is right on Tom Brady. Drew Brees played a heck of a game. I've mentioned it on here. I've texted it to you. I've put it all over social media. Sean Payton turned Drew Brees loose a little bit, let him throw, and they never got out of zone. They basically said, here, we're going to let the most accurate passer in the history of the National Football League see if he could read what zone we're going to play against him. I don't know what they did all week in the coaches' meeting, but they cannot do that again if they meet in the playoffs, because that was a slaughter, and it was embarrassing. Unless you're a Saints fan or a Drew Brees fan like I am, in which case I had the time of my life. But
yeah, that was an ugly game. But speaking of ugly games, a game that I really paid attention to was Bears and Titans, and oh my gosh, like, just talk about the reason why I really wanted to pay attention to this game is because you have 2 teams with a winning record that recently have not been playing their best football. And I thought that it would be a struggle, but I thought it would be more of a ball game than what it was. And in all fairness to Nick Foles and the Bears team, they made it a ball game by the end of the game. But I just think that you're seeing Chicago kind of unravel, if you will. The defense can only – I mean, they can only take you so far. And a defense without a running game is really an offense without a defense at that point. You're one-dimensional. You're good on one side of the ball, but you don't have that – you're not playing complementary football, offense, defense, special teams. And I think that's a problem for the Bears going forward. As for the Titans, I mean, the Bears have a good defense, but, I mean, I think that they gave the Bears too much of an opportunity at the end of the game to really feel confidently with them going forward. But if I had to pick between which team I feel confidently in moving forward, it's definitely the Titans.
Yeah, nail on the head, though. Let me throw something at you. I don't know if you saw it or not, but the Bears defensive unit has actually been on the field for more snaps than every other team except for the Jets.
That's a problem.
That's a huge problem considering the Jets only have 1 win or no wins on the season. Almost got the win on the Patriots.
Almost.
But that's a huge problem. And whenever I'm talking about credibility on the quarterback with Tom Brady, we need to talk about who's taking the responsibility here with the Bears. It's Matt Nagy. Every week, every offense falters. Every week, Matt Nagy gets up for his presser, gets on Zoom, talks to the reporters, and says, "Yeah, we watched the offensive film, and we don't think it's the play calling. It's 100% the play calling. It's boneheaded. It's been boneheaded going back to last year with Mitchell Trubisky under center. It hasn't been good since they went 12-4 and made the postseason. That was the last time the offensive play calling has been good. Now that you've subbed out and put Nick Foles in there, a guy that they feel more comfortable with, it's fine if you feel more comfortable with. But when you don't have the offensive line, which the Bears' offensive line is absolutely horrendous, when you don't have the offensive line to withstand, you need a guy that can get outside the pocket, maybe make some plays for you. Nick Foles isn't that guy. He's not that guy at all. That's why the RPOs work so well whenever he's in Philadelphia, is because that makes the defense unsure and makes the offense always right, is the theory behind it running an RPO. Chicago's not running enough of those. They're trying to run straight dropbacks, a lot of play action stuff. Nick Foles doesn't have time. He's throwing off his back foot, which is leading to dropped elbow, which leads to a fluttery ball, which leads to errant passes, staying long, getting intercepted, or coming up short. Whenever you pinpoint what the problem is, you could then reverse engineer. Okay, that leads to this. Well, the pinpoint of the problem is Matt Nagy, and he either needs to be fired for Chicago to have a chance the rest of the season, or two, relinquish play calling duties to Bill Lazor and see what he can do. Or I'll throw a third option out there. Mitchell Trubisky has to come back in, and so because his legs give the offense a playmaking aspect they just don't have with Nick Foles right now.
I think that they need to do both those things. I think Bill Lazor needs to be the OC, and I mean he is the OC, but the play caller. And I think that Mitch Trubisky needs to be back in there because you know who Lazor worked with? Lazor worked with Ryan Tannehill when he was in Miami. I'm pretty sure he was in Miami. But regardless, he has experience. Yeah, he was Miami Dolphins OC in 14 and 15. And he has worked under Chip Kelly. And the reason why he was brought in to be the OC for the Dolphins was because while working under, in college and then, Chip Kelly, he liked the style of the hurry up Joe Philbin did. You can kind of watch it on Hard Knocks that year. Mm-hmm. And Ryan Tannehill was, still younger then, so he was a little more mobile. He's still kind of a mobile quarterback, but, not maybe quite as much as he was when he was a younger guy in the league. But
right,
that tempo is what they need. Because right now, it's just so boring. That game was so hard to watch. Like, I'm a Vikings fan, and I felt bad for the Bears. And I do not like the Bears personally. I just feel like they have enough weapons offensively where they should, quite frankly, be doing way more than what they're doing. Allen Robinson, he's the number one wide receiver, but then Anthony Miller, and I really like Mooney. I think that he's young, he's a rookie, but I feel like in college he was always just a big play waiting to happen. And I think that,
right,
he can develop into that in the NFL. And then when you take a tight end at Cole Kmet, who was, some people rated as the best tight end in last year's class. That's up for debate. But regardless, when you have a bunch of holes on the offensive line and other parts on your defense, and you take a tight end with your first pick, keep in mind they didn't have a first-round draft pick. That tight end needs to be a key contributor right away. And maybe Jimmy Graham might be playing, really good football, and maybe that's why Cole Kmet's not on the field as much. But if you really want to run the ball, why not go two tights? You know what I mean? Well, and if you don't have, I don't know if they have a fullback or not, but if you don't have a fullback, I just mentioned those three receivers, spread them out a little bit, go two tight ends and run the ball.
Well, you look at what General Manager Pace has done for the Bears, and he's given Nagy every chance to succeed. He's given him a great defense to work with to complement his offensive play calling, which is the reason he was brought into Chicago. Publicly, whatever Nagy has said he needed, well, first it was a running back. Well, Jordan Howard doesn't fit my scheme. So they get Treat Cohen in there to complement Jordan Howard. Still didn't like Jordan Howard, right? So then they ship Jordan Howard off. They bring in David Montgomery. They needed to address things on the offensive line. They spent a high draft pick on David Montgomery. I like David Montgomery. I think he's a tough physical runner. But still, it's hard to run without a line in front of you. He doesn't use David Montgomery near enough. He's finding ways to get Tariq Cohen more touches in games. Now he's finding ways to get Cordell Patterson touches in games. It just doesn't make sense. Okay, well then he's talking about, the offensive struggles last year were due in part that we didn't have a tight end that could stretch the field. Okay, so then we go out, we get Jimmy Graham for you. We draft Cole Kmet. We get all these tight ends to possibly take, use the team route, utilize anything that you need. Offense is still struggling. So now we're looking at it and he's saying it's not the play calling. Whatever excuse Nagy has had in his bag of tricks, he's got to be at the bottom of the bag right now. And Nagy's got to be at the end. He's just got to be on the end of the leash right now. And I sense it from all my friends that are Bears fans. They see it too. It's 100% Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy is the issue in Chicago, and you hate to see a potentially great all-time defense wasted just because they can't get off the field. They can't catch their breath. It's truly a shame.
It is. It very much is. And, and to think that Matt Nagy was there is part of that Andy Reid tree. And it looks nothing like an Andy Reid offense. And it doesn't have to be as fan. I mean, a lot of that's Patrick Mahomes. I mean, when you have a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, he's rare, okay? It doesn't have – but just any sort of style, some flair that isn't cute like we talk about with, maybe Taysom Hill coming on the field too much in New Orleans, but flashy in a way that you have to get, defenses have to find different, ways to stop this guy, that guy, and that guy. And if they want to get Cordero on the field, fine. I mean, he's a playmaker, he is. There, you can use him in a plethora of different ways. But, here's just my opinion on this. If you want to if you want to run the ball effectively, why is the Ravens running game so effective? Because the quarterback's a runner. So they have to account for the quarterback. And normally when you hand the ball off to a running back, the quarterback doesn't block. So you're really 10 versus 11. Where if you have a running quarterback, you're one guy short because the quarterback doesn't block anyone, right? Or if the quarterback blocks everyone, then you're 10 on 11. You're normally 9 on 11 when the quarterback hands it off because the ball carrier can't block for anyone either. So if you want to do that, I mean, I love David Montgomery too. Have they ever considered running Wildcat with Cordero Patterson and David Montgomery? Or is that too cute in your opinion?
No, I don't think it's too cute at all. I mean, you see teams snake that in. You see Montgomery do that. You see the Colts do it with Trey Burton sometimes. It's a thing you see around the league. It hasn't ever gone away, truly. It's just you got to get the right guy to do it. And you got to, you see the the Saints bring Taysom Hill and do this tricky stuff in sometimes. And that's when it doesn't work for them. When they bring a guy in motion, run isolated QB power, that's whenever they get the best plays. It's not whenever they let Taysom Hill drop back and throw a deep pass. That really works. It's whenever they isolate, they let him run, they let the playmaker touch the ball. So yeah, if they let Cordero do something like that, I don't think it's a bad idea.
Exactly.
They really need to talk to my guy Joe Brady, who we're talking about next here in Carolina. That guy knows how to draw up some offense. I love watching the Panthers for one reason. It's Christian McCaffrey. The guy's my favorite player in the NFL. He's got a solid case that he's the best football player in the National Football League. He does it all. He runs, he catches, he can actually throw it. He's thrown a couple touchdown passes over his career. He comes from a very athletic family, his mother was a Stanford athlete. His dad was a 3-time Super Bowl champion. His older brother Max was an NFL wide receiver. He's an NFL star. 2 younger brothers are state champions at his old high school, and they're both Division I quarterbacks at Nebraska and Michigan. The family is star-studded, and he is the star of the family. He's touching the ball. When he goes in motion, they're going to throw it to him in the flat. It doesn't matter. He still makes guys miss. He still breaks tackles. The knock on him was he's too small. He can't run between the tackles. They put him in single back ace formation and let him run straight downhill on a dive, and he finds a way to pick up 12 yards. I've never seen anything like this kid. I know we've seen Barry Sanders.
Didn't he get like 5 on the bench press or 10 on the bench press at the combine? Who cares? I mean, the same scouts that were like, because of one bench press test are like, you know what, there's a chance we could have had that guy, but instead, we decided that he didn't test well enough.
I mean, yeah, it's things like that are just outdated. Yeah, like you said, who cares? I mean, he's not standing in to pass pro anyway. He's flaring out to make a play for you.
Exactly.
The Panthers with Ron Rivera was there and Cam Newton kind of, I don't want to say ushered it in, but in a way they used McCaffrey more as a pass catcher that was then kind of copied. I don't want to say Arians didn't do it. Arians did David Johnson a different way, as actually lining him up at wide receiver, which, by the way, Christian McCaffrey also does. This kid is electric. We've never seen anybody like him. He comes in and he changes this team. Like, this team believes they were good before Christian McCaffrey, but and he did get a shoulder injury, have to leave the game. Unfortunately, they lost 31-33. It sucks in a game like this that somebody has to lose, but the Panthers were the losing team to a very good Chiefs team. But you just, like I said, Joe Brady is just maximizing all of his tools. And this may be a hot take. I don't know if he leaves. He's not going to find a quarterback that knows his system as well as Teddy Bridgewater does. If he's going to have to teach it to somebody. The only guy out there are two guys out there that would know it better. That's Drew Brees and Joe Burrow. You're not going to get Joe Burrow, and Drew Brees is not leaving New Orleans. So Joe Brady, this is the next best thing you're going to get. He's not going to have the weapons that fit the system and go vertical, horizontal. I mean, with Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Christian McCaffrey, you've got receivers that can both.
Good nucleus.
Well, it's just what the versatility brings. The flat speed and athleticism, and those guys, adding Christian McCaffrey to that as well. So 4 guys, they can go vertical on you. They can run the stuff. They all run good routes. They can line up. Some of them can line up in the backfield. The pure toys at his disposal are sickening. This is a team that I think kind of made their stake at, hey, you guys picked us to finish last and be a bottom feeder in the NFL, whereas we're here to stay. If they could just keep building on the defense, add some pieces to Jeremy Chin, the second-round pick, add some pieces to their first-round defensive tackle. If they could just keep building away, replace Luke Kuechly, which is a big ask, but it could be done. This Panthers team is very, very talented. And like I said, I don't think Joe Brady leaves because of it. And credit to Matt Rule for keep making them competitive when they were supposed to suck this year.
Well, I think that he was smart going all defense in the draft. I mean, and I don't think it was easy for him to skip out on a guy like Denzel Mims, because I think he really liked Denzel Mims. But I think he understood when looking at the roster, okay, like we have, Curtis Samuel, Moore, Anderson, and then, I forgot Christian McCaffrey, So I think that, he got his guy, the big nose tackle. His name escapes me, from Baylor. But, he went all defense. He got Gross Matos, who's on IR. A lot of people forget that he's a Panther too. But, when you go defense on essentially your first 2 picks, defensive line specifically, but defense throughout your whole draft, I think that he understood that offensively this year, the offense is going to have to carry the team. But if he stays, he gets that defense young and clicking, you're going to be playing complementary football.
No, 100%. 100%. And with Christian McCaffrey and the versatility they have, they can slow the pace down of the game or they can go up tempo. They have so much. I don't think people actually realize with a creative offensive play caller like Joe Brady what exactly the Panthers what their best asset is. And in my opinion, that's versatility. Okay, you want to have a shootout, Kansas City? They came out of the gate firing. Let's take it right to you. Let's have a shootout. That's what we want. Or they could say, okay, we're going to slow the game down. We're going to run. We got 2 good running backs in Christian McCaffrey, Mike Davis. We could run the play action boots, like Sean Payton does with Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murray. We could do that. We could do whatever action we need. And that's their greatest strength. And I came away from this already knowing that the Panthers were a good team, already loving Christian McCaffrey, but just man, it could be said for a lot of guys. Adrian Peterson is a guy that comes to mind. When he's on the field, he's touching the ball, but you still got to stop him, right? Nobody seems to be able to do it.
Last point, do you think the Bears are kicking themselves for letting go of Mike Davis?
No, and the reason is they wouldn't have used him correctly.
Yeah.
Mike Davis was productive when he was in his brief stint in Seattle. Comes to the Bears, everybody's like, wow, we just got a very good back in Mike Davis. They let him go. Same thing with Jordan Howard. Jordan Howard was putting up solid numbers. Jordan Howard wasn't the problem with that offense. I don't know what he said to Matt Nagy one morning walking into the facility that made Matt Nagy think that he was the problem offensively, but clearly he said something in passing that he didn't like because Jordan Howard wasn't the problem either. He gets shipped off. Now David Montgomery's in the doghouse. So it doesn't matter who you get in there. You're gonna be assigned the blame, and they're gonna get rid of you. So
yeah, you're not wrong. Speaking of Seattle, though, another game that I kind of really thought was going to be a good game was Bills versus Seahawks, and my takeaways were kind of the same as the preview. The Seahawks don't have a defense, so it's going to be interesting to see how they were able to slow down the Bills' offense, which they were not able to do. And Josh Allen looked like a stud. Granted, like I said, it was against one of the worst defenses in the league, but they were also playing one of the better offenses in the league. So they knew that they were. I mean, the Bills have a better defense than the Seahawks, obviously, but there's a shot that there's a chance that they were going to have to get in a pretty big shootout with the Seahawks. But at the end of the day, I mean, Josh Allen put it on them. I mean, he had a huge game, arguably one of his better games as a pro. And I really think that, you're the quarterback guy here, but I think that you're starting to see him really grow. And I think that it's the confidence that now the coaches have in him, his teammates have in him. But they were able to get a stud wide receiver from my Minnesota Vikings and Stephon Diggs. And I think that's made all the difference in the world because Brown isn't a number one wide receiver. Cole Beasley isn't a number one wide receiver. Dawson Knox, I like at tight end, but he's not the type of tight end like a Travis Kelce or a George Kittle that can kind of supplement towards being a team's face of the franchise, for lack of a better way of putting it. And finally, I love Frank Gore, but I think that Singletary needed a compliment, and you get Zach Moss. So, I mean, that was kind of my big takeaway from it, is you kind of start to see Josh Allen really starting to grow into his own.
So it's kind of an unpopular opinion to say right now. Not that I don't agree with it, that he is making strides, but I still don't like Josh Allen. I still don't see a quarterback that's not playing with his athleticism. And, like I said, that's an unpopular opinion to have right now. And people are thinking, wow, like, are you watching the same thing we are? Well, yeah, I am. I'm just watching it through a different lens, right? Perfect example right now. How unstoppable was Lamar Jackson last year? Couldn't be stopped, couldn't be tamed. How's that offense doing in Baltimore right now? They're not the same, right? How is Cam Newton doing right now compared to early on in his career when nobody could stop him and nobody had an answer for him? He never grew as a passer because he leaned on the things that made him great, and he never developed his weaknesses. Granted, I'm not saying Cam Newton hasn't developed at all or he hasn't put in time, but right now, Cam Newton's struggling in New England with subpar weapons because he's not getting able to throw, and he doesn't have that next level passing ability. Even though he can make all the throws like Josh Allen, he doesn't have those disciplined mechanics that could be in contribution to all the injuries stacked up, not letting him be able to throw it. But whenever we look at Josh Allen, we still see the flat-footed throws. We still see the bad arm angles sometimes on the easy throws. The sideline throws, they're terrible for him. We still see him sailing over the guys' heads. We still see balls skip to him. Now, granted, does he hit the dig route? Does he throw the deep ball better? Yeah, we have seen strides there, but we still haven't seen enough to just knight him as the next great quarterback. We haven't seen that at all. We're still seeing a guy get by on a lot of athleticism, a lot of exciting plays, but Josh Allen still has a long ways to go, and that's why I'm not ready to crown him yet. But no, we have seen a lot of growth and maturity. I'm not against him enough to say that we haven't seen that. But Josh Allen does still have a hill to climb, and I hope we can still see him because he is an exciting young player, playmaker that you want to see succeed. The NFL needs as many of those guys as we can get because that's what makes it fun and unpredictable, right?
Yeah. So kind of going shifting gears towards previewing. So you're going to be previewing the Steelers-Broncos or Steelers?
I'm sorry. It's the Steelers are playing the Bengals this week.
Steelers-Bengals, that's right.
Yeah. The thing I'm most interested to see talking about quarterbacks is just Joe Burrow. Okay, we've seen this Bengals team have a complete attitude change. They believe that they're competitive now. How competitive are they? Is this offense capable and competitive enough to go against this top-tier Steelers unit?
I think that really you're starting to see the growth of T. Higgins and the continued growth of Tyler Boyd. They've pretty much given up on John Ross. And I think that they like their younger guys so much that you're not really seeing a whole lot of balls going A.J. Green's way. But I think the thing they're really missing is a healthy Joe Mixon. I think Giovanni Bernard what was it, 1 or 2 games, and he's been solid. I mean, he's always been a solid back, but he's not Joe Mixon. So I feel like once they get him healthy, I'm not going to say that they can beat the Steelers. I mean, obviously, if you have an any given Sunday approach, yeah, they have the ability to do that. I mean, upsets do happen, but it's really one of those 1 out of 10 times, I think. I don't think they're ready yet, but they will compete. I don't know if they'll win, but I think they'll compete.
I think the competitiveness is what we're searching for. That's when you're rebuilding.
Somewhere.
Exactly. When you're rebuilding a team, that's what you look for. You don't look for it doesn't happen overnight. You don't draft Joe Burrow and say, "Oh, we're going to win a Super Bowl now."
Yeah.
No, it's a culture change. It's a culture shift. Are they going to come to the stadium thinking we can win this game? Or are they going to come to the stadium saying, "Oh, we're the Bengals. We're probably going to get beat by 21 today." Which team's showing up? If I see that first team that thinks they could win, that's what I'm looking for. Because I know Joe Burrow goes into every game thinking he's going to win. He's proved that already. He says that already. He's mad that he's not winning. He said, the exact quote from Joe Burrow is, "I've never lost 2 football games in a row in my entire life before I got to Cincinnati." Dude doesn't like to lose. So is he changing that culture? On the other side of the ball, how's Big Ben going to rebound from having a poor offensive performance and feast on this bad? Right. Yeah. He took a shot to the knee. Looked to be a little gimpy there. Are we going to see a typical Mike Tomlin team in the Steelers that play down to their level of competition? Or are they going to say, enough with this? We're contenders this year. Let's raise our level and set the standard. That's kind of the two things I'm looking for from this game.
I'm looking at the matchup of, and that some people argue that maybe it's not necessarily always a quarterback versus safety as a matchup, but it is. Okay, you talk to Peyton Manning, and he'll tell you that he when he was playing the Steelers, he was playing Troy Polamalu. Okay, when he was playing the Ravens, he was playing Ray Lewis, but he was playing Ed Reed. I'm interested to see the matchup against Minka Fitzpatrick against Joe Burrow. Just because, Minka Fitzpatrick's come up huge. I think it was last week. But really, ever since he became a Steeler, that defense went from being good. It's a Mike Tomlin defense. They're always going to be good.
Right.
But when they traded for him, that defense started to turn into a great defense. And that year they didn't have Big Ben. The only thing that kept them in games and helped them win some games was that defense. And, they made the move. I believe they were the team that made the move for Avery Williamson of the Jets. They got him for like a 6th-round pick. I think Bush is out for the year.
Mm-hmm.
And so they needed a guy to help in the middle of the defense. And Williamson's, a very, very respectable linebacker there. So are they going to miss, Bush? Yeah, because he's not Devin Bush. But, I feel like it definitely did fill that hole. But I feel like unfortunately, I think that they're going to play down to their opponent. I do think they're going to win the game, but I think it's going to be ugly. When I think, didn't the Browns beat the Bengals and it was really close?
Twice. They've been 2 close games.
And I feel like that's what teams are going to think. Like, this was a team that could barely win a game last year, and they had the number 1 overall pick. But I think, like I said, they're going to compete. They're going to play hard. It's the NFL. Like, we've talked about this every week. Players are playing for their job regardless. And I don't think that they're going to fire Zach Taylor because I think they want to keep that consistency with them. But
right.
I think that if they play competitively and they realize, we're maybe a few pieces on offense away, primarily with the line, but, a couple key pieces on defense, they're gonna. I think that ownership's really gonna believe in Taylor. They're not an organization that really makes splashy moves with players, let alone coaches. I love Marvin Lewis. I think he's an excellent human being, but he was the coach there for 15 years or something like that. It was just a very long time, and they never had a playoff. When they made the playoffs, there were some years where they looked great. I think that they would have had a playoff win if Carson Palmer hadn't gotten hurt and tore his ACL that year. But, I mean, I think that it'll be a close game, but I think the Steelers are going to come out.
When you're talking about seeing growth and maturity from quarterbacks and talking about Joe Burrow, you got to talk about Tua Tagovailoa, and you got to talk about Justin Herbert, the emerging superstar. Tell me a little bit about this matchup that's going on.
I think that one thing I really like about Tua is he's playing with conviction. All of his throws, you're really seeing there's a purpose behind it. You know, I feel like, you know, there are a couple play action passes where, you know, coming out of his break, he was already going through his progressions. And when he threw the ball, he wasn't kind of like, I hope this guy's open. He's like, this guy's open, you know, or I'm going to throw him open. I think that, you know, he plays with a lot of conviction. And with Herbert, you know, kind of like Burrow, okay. Obviously, I think Herbert right now is in a better position, just from the record standpoint, because the Chargers, rather than finding ways to win games, have found ways to lose games.
Right.
And I mean, he's playing out of his mind. Like, I think he has like don't quote me on this, but I think a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio as a rookie, and that's still pretty good. And they have weapons offensively, but one of the reasons why Phillip Rivers ended up leaving was they never invested in the offensive line. You know, it's great that they have Keenan Allen, who was a third-round pick. A lot of people thought he should have been a first-round pick, but they got him. Heck of a deal. But you get Mike Williams. You know, you draft some guys on the defensive line. It's important. I mean, Bosa is important. Don't get me wrong. Like, you know, I'm sure they're happy they got him. But a lot of these mid-round draft pick at the line position have been okay. I mean, Forrest Lamp's okay. I liked him coming out of, I think it was Western Kentucky, and some of these other guys, but they're not elite level line, and I feel like that's been a problem with Phillip Rivers. Luckily, Herbert's a little bit more mobile than Phillip Rivers was, but I feel like they're close. They have a solid defense, but I think that I think I'm going to take the Dolphins in this one, to be completely honest with you. Tua right now is hot. You know, I think that, you know, that's 2 wins now, if I'm not mistaken, for Tua.
Mm-hmm. 2 in a row.
And
yep.
And I fully expect this to be a ball game, and it wouldn't surprise me if the Chargers won, because Herbert's playing that good of football. But I'm gonna pick the Dolphins here.
When you're talking about the offensive line for the Chargers, big story over the years, especially when Phillip Rivers was there, was just the massive injuries that they would accrue. Whether you want to attribute that to the field they're playing on, the training staff sometimes gets blamed for that. Whatever it might be.
Especially in San Diego, or especially for the Chargers. Just ask Tyrod Taylor.
Right, and then you would see, no joke. That's a
big mess up.
That sums up being a Chargers fan right there for some people. But you would see the Chargers, they would go out and sign their offensive line. They would poach good offensive linemen from other systems. You'd see him do it. Russell Okung from the Broncos. The reason the Broncos let him walk is he had injury concerns with them. So they said, okay, you can have Russell Okung. He comes in, and everybody's saying, well, why did they let him go after playing 2 weeks, 3 weeks without giving up a sack? This doesn't make sense. The Broncos' offensive line isn't good, blah, blah, blah. Russell Okung fails to play a full 2 seasons in San Diego. Now you know why. And that kind of was the theme, like, you know, to your credit of saying they can never patch together an offensive line. When you're talking about Tua Tagovailoa, though, I like what I've seen so far. I wasn't a guy that crowned Tua coming out like a lot of others did. I know he came in the second half and made a throw in a championship game for Alabama. I know, I was there. I saw it too, okay? I don't want to sound contrarian. I don't want to be Skip Bayless. I don't want to do any of that, right?
Yeah.
But my reserve is there were 4 first-round caliber wide receivers he was throwing to. Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Jerry Jeudy, and Henry Ruggs. That's quite – and he was handing the ball off to possibly a first-rounder in Najee Harris too, right?
Yeah.
So when we're factoring all of this in, who's the Heisman candidate for this college football season? His replacement, Mac Jones. So you're telling me that one guy can leave and all of a sudden his replacement could step in and put up better passing numbers and be a Heisman finalist just like you were? That's kind of alarming. And that was kind of my problem with Tua is when did Tua ever face adversity? When he faced adversity, he lost to Trevor Lawrence. We saw it with the hip injury, and we saw him rehab back, and I'm thrilled to see him back because
but that's what I'm saying.
Like
he hasn't had to face much on the field in game or losing adversity outside of outside of the loss to Clemson.
Right. We saw it to Trevor Lawrence, and we saw it to Joe Burrow. Those are the only two times, and he lost both games convincingly. It wasn't like it was a close game. It was convincingly, and it was a bad performance by him both times. So, when did we see Tua display the intangible elements of quarterback play that we want to see, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, he's got good confidence. Wouldn't you if you had 4 first-round wide receivers to throw to? I know I would trust my arm.
Oh, and don't forget about Irv Smith Jr. either. I mean, he's no slouch at tight end.
Right. I mean, God, the talent pool at Alabama is incredible. We all know about it. But that's my concern with Tua is everybody kind of said I saw things on people were ready to say he was better than Joe Burrow. Like, oh, the Dolphins got the better player. They may not got – Tua might be the third best quarterback in this class when factoring in Justin Herbert. And we don't even know if he is the franchise guy. So every week I watch Tua, I'm like, I want to see that adversity. I want to see those close games and him clawed out. I want him to prove me wrong. I want to be wrong about Tua, but those are my reservations. And should people disagree, I welcome the debate with them. But that's my explanation.
Oh, the NFC East. Okay, this next matchup, Giants-Eagles, both teams could still make the playoffs. And
that is incredible. How do you have 3 wins going into week 10 and you're playoff eligible?
Well, and this happened in the NFC East how long ago? 8 years ago, something like that.
Oh, man.
But here's the thing. I hope that not many NFL teams get COVID, but I kind of like the contingency plan of having 8 teams in the playoffs because then it's straight seeded. So regardless of who wins the division, they don't host a playoff game. Because, okay, let's say one of these teams makes the playoffs at 6-10. Okay, do you really think there should be a certain limit if you don't at least go 500 and win your division that you forego your right to host a playoff game? Right. There's exceptions to every rule, should be, at least. So, no, and I completely agree with you. That is an excellent point. Like I said, I circled this game as one to watch because even though it might be ugly, it can go one of 2 ways. It might be so ugly our eyes bleed. It might be a beautiful display of 2 bad teams playing to try to make the playoffs. But we're seeing both the Carson Wentz and Daniel Jones are both being questioned right now. This is whenever you find out exactly who on your team you can move forward with is whenever you're in these bad years. So we're going to find out a lot about both teams by this game, and that's what made it so interesting to me. Who is Daniel Jones? Who is Carson? We think we know about Carson Wentz, but Carson Wentz is having to face a lot of adversity this season. If he could somehow pull off a playoff berth, maybe win or at least have a good showing in the playoffs and stay healthy, relatively healthy, that's a big win for Carson Wentz, and the Eagles move forward, no questions. The division is the Eagles to lose. If they do manage to do that, now all of a sudden you're sitting there as the Eagles and going, we have a quarterback that can't stay healthy and just blew the easiest layup for a playoff spot we will ever see. Where do we stand with him? Well, and with this crop of quarterbacks coming up the next couple of years, that's a big question to have right now. Even last year, this division was a shit show, for lack of a better way of putting it. I mean, we were wondering who was going to make the playoffs for them last year. We kind of knew which teams it was going to be, but and here's the thing: the Eagles almost won the playoff game with Josh McCown. That's how bad. And granted, it was because of injury. I mean,
Right.
but they knew what they were getting with Greg Ward because they had to play Greg Ward last year, and I like Greg Ward coming out of Houston. But they're finally starting to get healthy though. I will get, I think they get Dallas Goedert back.
Yep.
I
Dallas
believe
Goedert's coming back.
that'll help
Alshon
them a
Jeffrey's
lot.
coming back.
Those two guys
Jeffrey's
are going to
coming back
help
as
them a lot.
well.
You have your big body receiver, and then you have your tight end finally. Back, so it'll help them for sure. But man, the offensive line's and I hate always being like, well, injuries, but at the offensive line, you need that consistency. Generally, you set your 5, and you see drastic success for those teams that can keep those starting 5 healthy and together for years to come.
Right. No, you're exactly right. That's why we saw Dallas run the football so well for a decade.
Mm-hmm.
It's because they put those 5 guys together, and whenever one guy would go down, like a Ron Leary, they had a guy in waiting in the wing to step up. Right.
Exactly.
No, that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point to make.
Speaking of getting their starting 5 linemen ready, I might go fanboy here for a second, but ever since they kind of set the offensive line, Pat Elflein got hurt early in the season, and they tried Drew Samir, who I liked out of Oklahoma. Didn't really work out. But as soon as they put Ezra Cleveland, the second-round pick out of Boise State, oh, man. I mean, they ran all over Green Bay. They ran all over Detroit.
To specify, the Vikings is who you're talking about.
Yeah, the Vikings. I will be watching the Vikings Bears, and I'm just saying that I think that I don't think the Vikings are going to win this division. I think it's the Packers division to lose because they have a huge lead on the Vikings, but they already creeped past the Detroit Lions. And now they have a chance to slowly but surely creep past the Chicago Bears. And I don't know if, a record less than 9-7 will get you in this year. I mean, even with the additions, because like we talked about, all those teams in the NFC East are legit. And then depending on what Buccaneers teams come to play, they're legit. Carolina, the record doesn't really show it right now, but they're more legit than people think, like we talked about. So I don't know. I think 9-7 or 10-6, you have to get out to make the playoffs, but I think they're going to make a push, and I think it's ultimately going to save Mike Zimmer's job. But more importantly, I think that this team's going to have this young team, I might add, will start, kind of gelling together and have more confidence because, the Vikings have lost a lot of starters, just over the course of the offseason, but also some to injuries. I think the original starting defensive back, including the nickel back from last year, left in free agency. Then you draft Gladney, Dantzler. You get Mike Hughes back from injury last year. And at one point, all 3 of those guys were out too. So you're kind of just signing people off the street at this point. So credit to them, the coaching staff for that. But and then for the Bears, could you imagine it's a division game. This game's big. It's one thing if you lose to the Titans. It's an AFC team. A loss is still a loss. You hate losing, but they're not near as important as these division games or games within your conference. So it'll be interesting to see. It's Monday night. It's in Chicago. The Vikings don't play well on Monday night. Kirk Cousins doesn't play well on Monday night, and the Vikings just don't play well in Chicago, ever. My childhood, literally, if the game is in Chicago, it is going to be a loss. Throw records out the window. Every now and then the Vikings win in Chicago. I'm cautiously optimistic that my Vikings will get the win.
Well, like you said, it is a big game. But whenever you break it down like this is essentially what you're looking at, okay? In no order, but you're looking at Saints, Buccaneers, Packers, Bears. Let's just throw up the Eagles from the East. This is assuming they push the eight, okay?
Yeah.
So then you jump over to the NFC West. You've got the Seahawks and the Cardinals. So now you've got 3 teams kind of vying for that last spot, okay? You've got the Rams, potential. You've got the Panthers, potential. The last team is the Vikings pushing for that spot. Here's the thing, though. They beat the Bears the Bears are going to be on a slope that they may not be able to recover from. So you can almost sub the Bears out of there and say the Bears are fighting for that 8 seed. They slide on up, right?
Yeah.
That's something you're looking at. It's a game with a lot of implications, like we said. We don't know what's going to happen. You probably can't catch the Packers in the division. There's too many losses already on. That's okay. That doesn't mean a wild card's out of play. Definitely. I mean, we see teams rally and make late pushes. My favorite one to reference is the Broncos with Tim Tebow. They start 1-3, they go to 2-4, they rally, they finish 8-8, beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in a playoff game. Funny enough, we're trashing these bad teams. They get the home playoff. They got the home field advantage because they won the AFC West. It was an absolute terrible division that year. Doesn't matter. Still did it. Went on. That could be a situation in play for the Minnesota Vikings. That could be a situation also in play for the Carolina Panthers, in the NFC South. Though I feel like those two teams are kind of in the same situation right now. Panthers are kind of chasing down the Bucs. I think the Saints have pulled away, said, hey, we're the best team in the South. They're chasing the Bucs, saying, okay, if we can just pick them off, we've got a chance. Vikings are doing the same thing. They say that, okay, the Packers are too far out. We'll see them in the playoffs if we get there. But the Bears, man, the Bears are sitting there. If we beat them, it's game on. Anything can happen.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's all the time we have.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure, Justin.
Always a pleasure, man. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel.